What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I did want to talk about the playlist design in Motorfest and if it would actually last long term. Now, we all do know right now, I feel like a lot of players have been discussing this. I mean, I've been seeing it on comment sections, I've been seeing it on Discord, also some of the main sections on like Instagram and stuff like that. So like, I do feel like I'm probably not the only one thinking about this. Now, the first thing I do want to say though is I'm not saying the playlists are terrible, but I do feel like they most likely could have had a better design to them. That way they're actually going to bring players back into them more frequently, or at least, bring people into them that actually want to do the playlist, and they're not going to be incredibly forgotten when they are completed. Funny thing about this though is I even made a video talking about the replayability issue in Motorfest, and I do feel like a big factor that plays into that is going to be the playlists. Now the thing about this though, let's take a good example of this right now. So we obviously did have the Season 4 update recently, which did end up bringing us a new playlist, the Donk vs. Lowrider. It actually had two different sections of events in it. I think it was like 12 events or something like that, or something around like 13 or whatever. And it basically switched from the Donks to the Lowriders, which was pretty dope. Even though some of the events were going to be basically the same thing as the other one, it was just with a different vehicle. Now, I did like the fact that some of the events were obviously different, even though all of them were basically like a time trial type. And then we also had that really annoying like a Guitar Hero type of event. Not really sure why they added that to the game. But the reason why I think about this though is if we look at a playlist like this, guys, let me know in the comments below. Once you actually do the entire playlist, do you actually want to go back in and play the entire thing again? This is a question I've been asking myself for a minute now, even with the other playlists in the game. Because, like, yeah, you would actually do a playlist and enjoy it, you'd be done with it. But the second I actually do a playlist, I don't really have a drive to do it again. Like, sure, there is going to be a bunch of challenges and stuff, but once those are done, you are pretty much going to be done with the entire playlist. So what do? Well, that's then going to come down to the grand races and the summits, which I would say a lot of players like the grand races, but that is the only form of PvP at the moment. And then the main part of endgame is indeed the summit. So once you're actually done with the summits, do you actually want to go back in and play the actual playlist again? I just feel like at this point, many players are like, well, you know what? Yeah, I mean, if you look at something like a playlist, you're probably going to do it, and then boom, you're most likely not going to want to do it again. And sure, some of them you can reset all the events and actually get like a big bonus from them, which is like, I think 75 or 100 grand depending on the playlist, which isn't terrible. It actually gives you a reason to play through the whole thing again. But even then though, why not make the playlist so you can actually like reset all the challenges, and then that way you can actually run those again, or at least make them a tad easier. Maybe there's like a prestige mode to the challenges. I don't know, man, where I'm going with this, but more of the fact of making the playlist more enjoyable and also dragging you back into them, man, because, well, at the moment, I just don't see a big reason to play them. The other thing I'm thinking about here is, would they actually last long term? We are currently going into a year of this game, obviously, here in November, and we all do know the game is probably going to be, well, I don't want to say this, guys, but I have to. The next 4 or so months until November is probably going to be incredibly slow on the game. I mean, yeah, we're getting another playlist in August, which I do think is going to be the off-road one, which I would say is kind of dope. Like, I did actually see the Jeep that's coming out. I'm excited for that thing. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what, man? After people do this playlist, they're going to be like, okay, what's next? Now, here's what's insane about this, though. We are obviously getting another playlist in Season 5, which they obviously planned that one of being the other Japan one, I believe, which is kind of odd, but kind of makes sense considering the theme of it. That is actually going to be another playlist. So you're telling me we're going to get a playlist every few months, whereas I feel like a lot of players get the entire playlist done in what, like an hour, and then they're like, okay, bro, what do we do next? Let's go do some grand races. Wait, we've already been doing the grand races. How about we go do the summit? Wait, the summit's done. So I just feel like having the events be a better design and actually drag you back into them really should be the biggest focus here. A good example of this again though is let's look at something like the Crew 2. That game obviously had like the Motorflix type of updates, and it had something like the Forsberg one, right? Where all the events would come out that entire season. We had a Motor Pass, obviously. Don't worry because that's most likely coming back in Season 5, but we are obviously having like all the events coming out then. You can do all of them, and it is kind of fun to go back in, do some of them, and do mixed ones. Now, the thing about a playlist, though, is yes, it is going to be fairly similar in the aspect that, yeah, you can jump back into it, drive any vehicle of your choice, and then pretty much go through each of the events again and pretty much keep playing through them. So in some ways, though, they are going to be fairly similar. But one concern I have to say, though, is I do feel like a lot of players might look at this and go, okay, so we are getting like a playlist here. A few months later, we'll get another one. Is this going to be the main type of content they end up adding? Like, I did actually make a video about this, guys, going over like the 5 years if this game would last that long, like the Crew 2 did. And I just feel like releasing a playlist every few months or something is not going to be enough to do that. And also, the crazy part about this is the fact that I have been seeing many people saying a very similar thing, though. They're like, okay, so the playlists are added, they're going to be fun for a week or so, or in some people's cases, they probably do them in like an hour, like I did the Season 4 one. I was actually done with that entire playlist in around an hour and 30 minutes. And the funny and the saddest part at the same time of it being funny, I guess, is the fact that once I was done with that playlist, I had legit no motivation to go back into that playlist and do those events again. Like, yeah, sure, you can drive any car of your choice and do different events or, different styles of events with them being different routes and stuff. But even with that, though, I really do feel like many players are not getting super excited and going, oh man, let's go jump into this playlist. Like, I just don't feel like that is happening. Now, a big question with this, though, is what can they do to the playlist to make the experience better? Number one, I would say right now, guys, is easily going to come down to the fact to simply increase the pay of each of the events. I mean, a lot of players might not want to do the event if it pays $10 or $12,000, but if you actually increased each event around 10 to 20 grand each, or increasing the XP you get from them as well, then that's probably going to make a lot more players do the said playlist and the other events instead of only doing one or two events that pay a ton of XP, which is Scene 7. That is still probably one of the best ways to make money in XP. And if you have an event like that paying that much money that quick, why actually do the other events and also the other playlists that are not going to pay nearly as much? Now, the other thing with this, though, is maybe make it so like the championship thing you can reset, which I do believe, as I mentioned, some are like 75, 100,000. Legit double those, bro. Make them around 200 grand for doing it. 150,000 minimum for some of them. That would probably make a lot more players go, you know what, bro? All the events in this actually pay more, and I also get a championship money thing from it. Let's go reset the whole thing, and you'll make like, what, like 400 grand doing it? Like, that'd be dope. And you'd also get a lot of XP and stuff from it, so I really do see that as like a win-win. But there's also going to be another part of this. That is going to come down to the fact that this entire thing is obviously going to be a design thing for Motorfest. So, like, they are probably not going to be able to change everything or at least, overhaul the entire playlist system, because I would say that's going to be a key design part of the entire game. Like, for example, most of the time the actual playlist and stuff goes into like the summits, or at least a theme for the said summit in that entire month, or a lot of the playlists go into that summit, or they have some type of thing in the custom show and stuff. So the entire game is basically going to be tied to it. And the craziest part about this, though, is I'm not saying that's a terrible design, because an easier way to fix that is to most likely add stuff onto it or change a few things around. That way the playlists are going to make players go, you know what? Let's go jump into them. These are a lot more fun to do now, instead of most of the players doing the summit or the grand races and then basically being done with the game besides that. Like, I just feel like if the playlists were more fun or they paid more, a lot more players would definitely be doing them. And I can even say maybe have them have a bit more rewards than them. Like, I do know they obviously have the challenges, as I mentioned, which everybody does them. Why can't we actually reset some of them, like all of the main solo challenges? That way you can get money and XP from them again. It gives somebody something to do. Maybe have like all the rewards on top of the timeline thing instead of being like an audio signature, like an outfit. Make it so it's going to be crew credits and bucks on every single one of them. That way players are going to go, wait a minute, man, I can make around 5,000 crew credits from this playlist if I reset it. And then the next time I reset it, I can make around, let's say, $100,000 or $200,000. After that, I make 10,000 crew credits. Like, that would be so dope, man, to have something like that in the game. Do let me know what you guys think about the playlists in the comments below. What are some of your biggest negatives with them, and if you do like them, what are some of your positives? I would probably say many players do most likely enjoy them a bit, but they're also probably asking themselves or at least wanting more every time they do them. But once again, though, let me know your thoughts on the entire playlist design in the comments below.